Hey guys, back with the Tales series review, part 2, and let's just jump right in with Tales of Legendia, or actually Legendia. I always used to call it Legendia, which now that I think about it, that does really sound odd. It's Legendia. This did get a North American release. This game, Over Rebirth, which has always been odd to me, considering this is basically the black sheep of the Tales series in a lot of people's eyes. It wasn't done by the typical Tales team. Project Melfi's, I think they're called, did this. I think it was just a bunch of like people from the Tales team, people from like the Soul Calibur team, and a few other people. It was like a kind of joint effort. And you can tell this game feels very different from a lot of Tales games. For one, the art style is very different. Characters are very small, almost chibi-like, but not quite. Environments look very weird, almost kind of. I don't know. The game is actually a step back graphically. I think it's still 3D, but it doesn't have that really neat cel shaded look that Symphonia had. This one's more. It's just a really weird visual style that I'm not too fond of. The soundtrack is completely different from most Tales games. The guy by the name of Go Shina did this compared to Sakuraba, who does the usual Tales soundtracks, and they all start to sound a bit the same. I think that's part. I think I've heard like an interview somewhere that like the Tales studio wants the Tales games to have similar soundtracks to give them kind of like the same feel from game to game. So he kind of composes soundtracks that sound similar from Tales game to Tales game. Not so with Legendia. I keep saying Legendia when it's Legendia. This soundtrack is really beautiful. There's a lot of great tracks here, and some of it's jazzy. A lot of like horn instruments thrown in some of the songs. A lot of the songs are very subdued. It gives the game a different feel overall. The soundtrack, and I really like it. That's actually probably the best Tales soundtrack out there. Gameplay wise, it's also a step back from Symphonia. It's back to a 2D plane. And it feels clunky, I gotta admit. When I was playing this, the combat felt kind of clunky. The main character who I used, Sentinel, he's got like a hand-to-hand combat style, so that made things feel a bit different to me as well. I eventually got used to the battle system, and it's still fun. I still found myself having fun with it, but it was definitely a noticeable step back. Random encounters are back. Symphonia didn't have random encounters, which is one of the main reasons I love that game so much. Random encounters were back in Legendia. The encounter rate is not very high. So, I've heard a lot of people say it's high. To me, it didn't really bother me. Probably because the dungeons aren't as involved in it as in a lot of Tales games. Symphonia, for instance, had a good amount of puzzles. Some annoying. Most of them were fine. Nothing too crazy. Legendia, the dungeons are basically massive corridors that you just walk from point A to point B. A lot of people don't like that. I did because, honestly, if they were any more involved than that, I would have been pissed off because of the random encounters. And because, the main battle system is not really that much fun in this game. Now, I actually really like Legendia, though. I think it's actually quite underrated because of mainly the cast of characters and the story. It's actually one of my more favorite storylines in the Tales series. I don't want to go over anything. I don't want to spoil things, but I don't know, it's a bit darker than most. Now, the character of Shirley, I can't stand. A lot of people don't like the character of Shirley. I really can't stand her, but the rest of the characters I really did like. A lot of personality to them. Norma, I thought, was really funny. A lot of great humor in this game as well. The writing wasn't too terrible. I know, I found myself really invested in the storyline and characters, and that's what kept me going. And the battle system wasn't enough to turn me away, and unlike, Fantasia and Tales of Destiny, I don't like those battle systems too much. But this game, the spells don't interrupt battles, so I wasn't annoyed by that. There's a world map, at least, in this game, unlike the newest Tales games. It's not as fun to explore as some other world maps. There are a lot of side quests in this, and there's, voice acting. I seem to remember the skits being voice acted, too, which is excellent, actually. Again, the skits in Legendia are awesome. Really, you added to that character development, which I really liked in this game. It does feel a bit lazy, this game. in the sense that at the end you get like these character quests. Each character has a quest that kind of adds to their background and they get character development. That part of the game is like not voice acted like at all, and it feels really lazy and kind of almost separate from the main game. That whole section I didn't like too much, but it wasn't bad. And with that combined with the actual game, this game is pretty lengthy too. I definitely felt its length towards the end. I was getting sick of it towards the end. So there's a lot I dislike about this game, but overall I come away positive from it. And I definitely think it's one of the more underrated games in the series. Do I recommend going out there and playing it? Yes, but once you've gotten all the great Tales titles out of the way. But yeah, overall I did actually enjoy Legendia. Next we had Tales of the Abyss. Now this is one of my favorites in the series, and I didn't actually get to play it until the DS port, the 3DS port rather, a few years ago. On the PS2, I just missed it. I don't know, I just missed it, like a lot of people did, apparently. I know a lot of people actually did miss out on it back on the PS2, and we, thank God this got a North American release. This, to me, was like, whereas Legendia was a disappointment, Abyss is a proper follow-up to Symphonia. No random encounters. It generally has the same kind of feel. Visually, though, I feel like it is kind of almost a step back. I preferred, like, the cel-shaded look of Symphonia as opposed to the more anime-styled look to Abyss. But it still looks great. You had a great cast of characters in Tales of the Abyss. Luke is a fan favorite. I'm not as big on Luke as a lot of people are. Now, he's known to have a really great arc. He starts off very hateable, and I kind of agree, but at the same time, I found it kind of amusing how much of a dick he is in the beginning, and how much of a spoiled brat he is. It's the middle portion of the game I found myself really hating him even more, because he kind of goes into Emil territory. We'll get to Emil later, but I don't know, he's finished off strong. I liked his character in the end, but I don't know, his arc it took a while for me to warm up to Luke. The rest of the cast of characters I loved. Tyr is one of my favorite female characters in a Tales game. The storyline is fairly... it's not bad. There's a lot of, techno babble, and it's very hard to follow. Honestly, I still couldn't tell you what exactly happened with that storyline. And it hasn't been that long since I last played Tales of the Abyss. It's one of the more confusing storylines. I never quite got a hold on it, but it was interesting enough to carry you through the game. Gameplay, fantastic, like with Symphonia. It's generally kind of the same. You've got I think it's called an FOE system. FOE. It's basically these circles that are on the ground in the battlefield where they amplify elemental attacks. So you can stay in these circles and use a fire attack, and it will do more damage if that circle is red. It's an interesting concept. I found myself not having to use it that much or really pay attention to it that much. I feel like they could have maybe used that concept and fleshed it out a bit more, or did some more with it. I don't know, it's nice that it's there, and you could probably use it to great effect, but I found myself not really caring about it. But the overall battle system is really fluid, really fast, lots of different skills and mystic arts, and it's just like Symphonia, it's just a really fun battle system that really never gets old. The dungeons in Tales of the Abyss were similar to Symphonia, where they're kind of puzzle-oriented, but nothing that will make you pull your hair out. But they're fairly involved, but the fact that there's no random counters doesn't make them, it makes them not frustrating at all. Voice acting is top-notch. Skits, unfortunately, aren't voice acted, which, when I was playing the 3DS game, the 3DS port, I was kind of disappointed by that, I felt, because I'd played so many games of voice-acted skits before that going back to non-voiced skits, it was really kind of jarring. But the character development is still there, and a lot of the skits are very entertaining. The game is still a beast. You've got your world map, which I loved. I love world maps in RPGs, if you can't tell. But tons of side quests, tons of things to do. It has that epic feel to the game. That's all I really can say about it. It's a fantastic game overall, and definitely one of the best Tales games. I had a lot of fun with it. After Tales of the Abyss was Tales of Innocence. We didn't get that game. It's for the DS. Actually, Tales of Innocence R came out on Vita for the Japanese not too long ago. There is a translation actually available for it, but unless I can play it on the 3DS, someone tell me if you were able to do that, like maybe a flash card or something. I don't know though if it works on 3DS or not. I'd like to play the translated version, but I don't know. I'm not super excited about it because it's not actually made by the actual Tales studio, Tales of Innocence. And from what I've seen of gameplay, I don't know. It doesn't look that great to me, but I hear it's not terrible. So I hear the dungeons are really bad in it. But moving on from that, we'll talk about Tales of Vesperia. Now, this did get a North American release only on Xbox 360. There's a PS3 port with added stuff and content for the PS3. A lot of people really want that PS3 port, but I don't think we're going to be getting it. And I know a lot of people complain about that, but I want to say it's worth buying a cheap Xbox 360 and Tales of Vesperia just to play this game because it is fucking phenomenal. Now, this, oh man, like this I played, honestly, I think it was actually the Tales game I played after Symphonia because I didn't have a PS2 after Symphonia. I did briefly and then I had to get rid of it. Well, I think it was my brother's and he sold it. So I couldn't play Legendia or Abyss. So the next time I got to play a Tales game was Vesperia, and it brought me back. It made me realize just how much I love Tales games and that formula. And this is what I consider, like this is just one of the best Tales games by far. Okay, I've talked about this game so many times, but the cast of characters, perfect. Absolutely love every single one of them. Yuri, my favorite protagonist in any RPG. Just a really excellent character. I just love him. Lots of humor. The skits are my favorite skits in any Tales game. Very entertaining. The voice acting. Some of the best voice acting I've heard in a JRPG. Just top notch. Just amazing stuff here. The story is probably maybe the weakest link, I think, with Tales of Vesperia. There's some better storylines in the Tales series, but I didn't think it was bad. I thought it was interesting enough to, carry me through the game. Tales of Vesperia is a huge game. There still hasn't been a Tales game that's compared to this in size and scope. It's a massive game with so many things to do, and it's the closest I've come to 100% a Tales game. I think the only thing I didn't do was like the monster book stuff, like filling out the monster book, encyclopedia rather. I didn't fill that out, but other than that, like I almost 100%ed this game. I loved it so much. First playthrough was like 62 hours, and I proceeded to do New Game Plus various times. It's like the world is so interesting here, and there's so many places to go. The world map's here and in full force. Really fun to explore. No random encounters. Again, the battle system, it's my favorite incarnation of the Tales battle system. I know, here's where a lot of people are going to disagree with me, but there's something about this battle system, like it's simplistic compared to some later battle systems in the Tales series, but I really loved it. I thought there was a lot of like different, like I don't know, it's hard to describe my love for the battle system in this game because I will admit like their later battle systems are probably better, but I don't know, I really liked all the different systems in this game. The side quests, so many interesting side quests. The spa was here again, and that was really fun. The dungeons I thought were really well designed. Nothing got in your way. Like, nothing was frustrating in this game. I think the only thing, there are maybe a few bosses that I think there was some difficulty, the famous Tales difficulty spikes with. But it was so hard for me to, it's hard for me to complain about this game. I just loved, like, every ounce of this game, and that sense of adventure this game had was amazing. The music, it's actually one of my favorite Tales soundtracks. Again, I've gone on about this game at various points. Just a fantastic game, and one of those Tales games that I'd say start it with. It's a great entry point into the series. Oh yeah, right, the visuals. I forgot about the visuals. Still the best looking Tales game in my opinion. That cell shaded HD look to this game, like it's a beautiful game. Anyways, that's enough about Tales of Vesperia. Fantastic. Now, some of you might notice that I missed a game. I want to talk about this after Vesperia, and that's Tales of the World Radiant Mythology. and actually, before this, really, Tales of the Tempest actually came out before Innocence in Japan. That's a spin-off title. I'm not going to talk about that. I hear it's the worst Tales game ever made, though. But Tales of the World, Radiant Mythology. I was surprised that this came out on the PSP. When I had a PSP, I don't have one anymore, regrettably. It was one of the only PSP games I bought. I didn't buy too many PSP games before I sold it. And I gotta say, coming off of Symphonia, I think. Actually, you know what? I said I played Vesperia. I want to say, you know what? I think I still ended up playing this game after Vesperia, but this was a bit disappointing because I wasn't sure what to expect with this game. I actually didn't read reviews or watch gameplay or anything on this game. And what this is basically like there's a storyline, but you basically play as a bunch of different Tales characters from different Tales games, and you take on quests. These can be really short, some can be fairly lengthy, and it's got like Tales of the Abyss's battle system, which is a great battle system, but it's very, it's kind of like a minor game. The main storyline's not that compelling. And I don't know, the quest system, I thought, like, it's a game that's neat for a handheld. It's a great handheld game. It's a nice pick up and play style game, but I didn't find myself too interested in it. I found myself getting bored of it kind of fast. And I did finish it, but I don't know, it's not a bad game. The combat in this game is still really fun. It's just I kind of missed, the world map and just, the adventure and just that, a classic Tales storyline. It just felt off, this game. And it is a spin-off title, so I can't be too hard on the game, because for what it does quite well. It's not one of my favorite Tales games, that's for sure. Now, after Tales of Vesperia is the sad period with Tales games. We didn't really see another Mothership Tales game until Grace's F. Japan got Tales of Hearts. Now, this was actually a Tales Studio game, and out of all the handheld ones, the DS ones, this is the one I really want to play. It got a Vita port to Japan as well. I really do hope we get this one. It's sad that we didn't, but it does, from what I've seen, it actually looks pretty good, I gotta say. It's very disappointing. It's at this point where a lot of people were really hating on Namco Bandai. I don't think it's fair to hate on them anymore, but, a very long gap between Vesperia and Grace's F, unfortunately. It's great that the Tales series is, running strong now, but this was definitely a sad period, and Hearts was a game that I really wish we did get to play. Now, I said earlier we didn't get another Mothership Tales game until Grace's F. We did receive another spin-off game, though, Tales of Symphonia Dawn of the New World. Now, this, a lot of people say, Legendia is the black sheep. I'd say this is the black sheep of the Tales series. It's a lot of people's least favorite. And I gotta say, it was a pretty big disappointment coming from Symphonia. I mean, a sequel to Symphonia, and you get this. This is where I felt the Tales games started to become, you started to feel a bit of laziness. Less so with the newer games, but probably more so with this game. The world map, gone. Completely removed. Instead, you get to pick from a menu where you want to go. Boring, removes, the game is completely linear, and that was a very big disappointment. The battle system itself is actually pretty decent. I thought it was fun enough. It's very similar to Symphonia. It's definitely a bit dated by some of the newer games standards, but it's all right. It's no Vesperia for sure. Actually, even Tales of the Abyss and Symphonia, honestly, I thought had more enjoyable combat systems, but it's good. It's fun. The disappointing, I mentioned the world map being gone. That's one of the disappointments. What else is there? The story and characters. Okay. The storyline in this game, honestly, I found myself not caring about it whatsoever. And I think a large part of that is due to the characters themselves. Only two main characters in this game, and that's Emil and Marta. Both of them extremely annoying. Marta is just very, I don't know, it's hard to describe her, but she's just really annoying. Emil, even more so. by far the worst Tales protagonist. Honestly, I'm kind of surprised that a protagonist this weak could be in a Tales game. He's whiny. He's always saying sorry. He's always apologizing. He gets better towards like the very end of the game, but for most of it, you just want to fucking punch him in the head. He's just so goddamn annoying. And I found the chemistry between Emil and Marta was just not there. It was really awkward, too. This game is very awkward. You get Tales of Symphonia characters thrown in here, too, but a lot of them act, like, differently than they do in Symphonia. Lloyd, there's a reason for him acting differently, but the rest of them just felt weird. Like, the voice acting, like, a lot of the voice actors from Symphonia don't make an appearance here, so, I mean, that might be part of the reason. And they just come in at random times, like... Their levels are capped. You can't change their equipment, and they'll join you, you'll use them, and then they'll leave. And then maybe they'll come back at another point. So you got to use monsters that you, like, capture. It's got, like, a Pokemon element, Tales of Symphonia Dawn of the New World. It's very half-baked. I hated using it. And, honestly, this was one of my big frustrations, too. I used the Tales of Symphonia characters the entire way through the game, right? And then the final battle comes, and you can't use the Tales of Symphonia characters. You gotta use these monsters. I didn't level up any of the monsters, so I was fucked. The final battle was literally impossible for me. So I had to get a monster and grind for hours to be able to beat the final boss. It was really frustrating, and I was hating a lot of this game up until that point, and that just really made me mad. There's like little quests you can take on, kind of like actually in Tales of the World, like mini quests you can take on instead of like actual side quests because there's no world map in this game. Just everything about this game reeked of laziness. You know, there's not really much to like here, I gotta say. The battle system was fun enough to get me through it, but I agree with a lot of people it's not a good game. It's not a great game. It's mediocre at best. Still, though, a weak Tales game is still better than a lot of games out there, so, you know, I think that's why I was able to get through it, but definitely a huge disappointment, and kind of signaled an unfortunate laziness in a lot of future Tales games that we'll get to later. But yeah, that's Dawn of the New World for you. Not so great. It was a long time till we got another Tales game, but we finally did with Tales of Grace's F. Originally a Wii game, this is like an updated port with added content. Lots of excitement for this one. I was very excited for this one. You know, a Tales game after so long. And this is actually a lot of Tales fans, one of their like favorite games in the series. Here's where my opinion's probably going to differ from a lot of people here. I like Tales of Grace's F, but I have complaints with it. Okay, where should I start? Like, the story and characters. The storyline is interesting in the sense that you start as kids, but there's like an intro sequence where you start as kids and an event happens, like a tragic event, and then you play as adults after a couple hours, and the rest of the game is you as adults, and, you know, what happens as a kid affects the storyline. I don't want to go into it too much, but it's actually a pretty decent storyline. It's a bit melodramatic compared to a lot of Tales games. There's a lot of, like, sappy and awkward moments that, you know, a lot of, like, moments I really, like, had to, you know, eye roll at. The cast of characters, though, is, like, a lot of people like this cast of characters. I don't know. Okay, Asbel, I think, is one of my least favorite Tales protagonists. He just comes across very, like, he's kind of like Emil. He's sort of whiny and... like, he's very apologetic and things like that. He's not terrible, but I don't know. He felt kind of plain as well and kind of generic. I don't know. I'm not big on Asbel. Hubert, I wasn't too big on. I found him kind of like I don't know. He was kind of just annoying. Sophie, again, like her character. Again, there's a reason for the way she is. So she doesn't bother me so much, but in the beginning, she was definitely kind of annoying. Cheria, you know, she's actually one of my least favorite female characters in a Tales game. She's very irritating. I don't want to spoil this game, you know, and the cast of characters in the story, but I don't know, the characters just really bugged me in this game. I found them very kind of irritating, all of them. There's some good ones, but I don't know. And I think a lot of people are going to disagree, but I don't know. For me, the cast of characters was kind of weak. And I think that's what ultimately made me enjoy the storyline less, even though I think the idea of it and the actual storyline itself is actually not bad. Now, I talked about laziness before, and here's where I think it comes into effect again. Again, the world map is gone. Instead of picking from a menu, though, like in Symphonia Down in the New World, you kind of have like these interconnected like pathways, like field pathways that interconnect towns, and you can choose from like a menu later on and do fast travel. Like this, I felt really removed the sense of adventure and scope that previous Tales games had. There actually is a decent amount of side quests in this game, but they weren't as fun to tackle, I felt, because of this kind of linear structure the game has. A lot of I don't know, a lot of this game felt like a step back from Vesperia to me. A lot of its systems were very half-baked, I felt. It tries a lot of new things, admittedly. The crafting system is interesting. I found it kind of annoying and convoluted. The title system, titles no longer are pretty much meaningless. There's a bunch of titles to collect, and they can give you new abilities and stuff like that. And you're kind of doing different things to get your titles. But there's just so many of them that it's a pain to deal with. Going through that title menu and picking titles, I didn't enjoy that, honestly. It's, again, an interesting idea, and a lot of people did end up enjoying it. I didn't. The battle system, which a lot of people think Grace's F has the best battle system in the Tales series. To me, it just felt kind of restrictive, the CC system. Once you get the flow going, it can be fun, but a lot of this has to do with the fact that, honestly, I think I did actually just not quite grasp the battle system, because this game actually kicked my ass at various times. I found it kind of difficult, but I just found myself very frustrated with the battle system overall. The camera, I felt, was kind of annoying. It got in the way at times. I preferred like the free movement of like Vesperia, for instance. It's definitely a neat battle system. I liked the dodging mechanics. I thought those were really cool. But I don't know, the CC system to me just felt kind of restrictive. Again, a lot of people are going to disagree. But the battle system was still fun. Don't get me wrong. A Tales battle system is almost always good. And here it was definitely enjoyable. But my main complaint with Grace's F, actually, are the dungeons. I think the dungeons in this game are fucking terrible. They start off okay. I mean, they start off actually very boring, just like corridors, point A to point B. But eventually they become more involved and have some of the most tedious puzzles I've ever seen in a Tales game, actually in an RPG rather. The final dungeon itself, the final dungeon in this game, not in the epilogue part, but the final dungeon, is terrible. I hated going through this fucking dungeon. And even though there's no random encounters in this game, I found it hard to avoid a lot of the enemies. And I was just trying to get through this place, and it's the amount of backtracking just drove me up the wall. And the dungeons, it's weird. The dungeons have this kind of pattern where they just get worse and worse and worse. And the epilogue, the final dungeon, was dreadful. The secret optional dungeon, I tried it. I got like halfway through it, and I just gave up. Like, it was the most... Like, the dungeon designs, I just fucking hate them in this game. And if there's one major complaint I have with Grace's F, it's the dungeons. And it's ultimately probably what made me enjoy this game less than a lot of people did. I've brought up complaints here and there, but like overall it is still a solid game. I enjoyed my time with it. I just didn't like it as much as a lot of other people did. And finally, Tales of Exilia. Now, this is a very recent release. Thank God we got this game. And we're getting all future Tales games, which is fantastic. I did a review on this, so I'm not going to go too in-depth with this game. You can check out the review for my full thoughts on it. It's fantastic. I love Tales of Exilia. It's a nice improvement over Grace's F. Unfortunately, though, there is still a bit of laziness I could feel. The world map is still gone. I mean, you have these open fields that, instead of like pathways in Grace's F, they're like open fields that connect the cities. But they're very like cut and paste, and it's like the enemies are just thrown in randomly. I found myself like avoiding some fights and running into others. I don't know. Again, like the world map system felt very... Like the map system and the exploration felt toned down like too much. That said, the characters I loved in this game. The storyline I thought was actually one of the best Tales storylines I've seen. The dual character system I really enjoyed. The battle system I thought actually, here's where, again, a lot of people are going to disagree. I thought it was a nice change from Grace's F, because I just didn't care for that battle system too much. So I really enjoyed playing through Zillia's battle system. I thought it was really fun. I loved like the team attacks you could do. The voice acting was amazing. It was just a really solid Tales title. It's not perfect, but I definitely enjoyed it. And I'm excited to see what Zillia 2 is all about, and actually especially the new one, Zestiria. Tales of Exilia. Again, check out my review for further thoughts, but I really like it. Well, that about does it for my Tales series review, guys. I know I've missed out on a lot of titles. There's a lot of different things about each game that I forgot to mention. It's one of those series that I can just talk about forever. I can talk about each entry forever, and it's a fantastic series. If you haven't gotten into this series, definitely get into this series. It's one of the best JRPG series out there, and it's still going strong. Unlike Final Fantasy, which has gone downhill. Tales series, it's very consistent. Great games, just constantly being pumped out. And the localizations just keep coming. Namco Bandai is really on the ball here with this series. If I had to pick one to start with, if you're new to the series, Vesperia, Abyss, or actually even Grace's F might not be a bad place to start. Symphonia is also a good choice. Vesperia, though. Play Vesperia. So anyways, guys, I want to thank you for watching. Leave in the comments below what your favorite Tales games are. If you want to do a response, that would be awesome. What are your least favorite Tales games? Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you in the next part where I will rank it from, rank each Tales game I've played, and from, at the very bottom to the very top, my least favorite to my favorite. See you in the next part.